some factors such as geographical locations and the distance that we might be covering as members of the movement, we will talk of the continuous full understanding of the basic living and unite yourself. How do we solve such a problem in our geographical location? That is my question.
Could you repeat the question? I didn't get it.
How do we tackle the issue of resilience if you are not fully understanding then let's say you think of in our movement, yes, otherwise it's spread.
You mean if you live quite far apart from each other? I think it's a problematic subject. You can have some intercourse digitally, of course, online. But I think you have to make some effort to meet up on some kind of semi-frequent basis to be able to establish some kind of relationship. Not only with her, but you'd also want to meet up with her friends and associates so you can get some idea of who and what she is and vice versa. You have to make the effort to get to know one another. The further apart you are, I think the longer your courtship will take. Extended courtships are not normally a good idea. And if you start running into 1.5 to 2 years for a courtship, I'm not sure of the necessity of having courtship so long. If you live so far apart that you're not able to meet on a regular basis, it may end up being that kind of time period. So my answer is, you have to make effort. The problem in the global world, if you meet someone who doesn't live close to you, you need to make effort somehow to meet each other. That's all I don't think you can do it virtually. If anybody else has any thoughts. Marriage is an expensive, time-consuming business. It takes effort. It's not worth pursuing. Find someone more local. I'm saying it in all seriousness. What do you think?
I'm running out of words, I cannot say anything concerning it. Because in fact, my nature is the issue. Yes, at times we meet here games. You only feel allocated time to spend time together, and you admire some traits in someone, and you think that is the very character of an individual. Come marriage after marriage, that person changes. If it is the person you're looking at, the scruffy husband, an older wife, then how do you request a change? So maybe from experience, married people maybe go to find a solution to such a problem so that we can be ready in getting into these issues before.
Without having open courtship, it's very difficult. If you have open courtship and you live at a distance, you know, the older families, the older couples, you know, the sister or you could stay at their home. You can have chaperoning. There are ways of overcoming this, but it needs to be an open, frank discussion in a community of this size. If you persist to do things in secret, or you let your culture dictate how things work, it becomes very difficult. And you end up having to close your eyes and just marry, and then deal with the mess afterwards. It's not really a good plan. With ready, it's not a good way of doing it. It takes a lot of effort if someone lives, especially if they live far away. If you're committed to that person, that you see qualities in them, then it's worthwhile pursuing. It takes some effort, but you need the help of other people. Without help, it's fraught with danger. what I mean? I gave one example of how if she was from South Africa and she came here, she would stay with our brother and sister over there for the weekend or a week under their guardianship, and you could interact as their children with them supervising what's going on. You'd have church fellowship. I think there are legitimate ways of overcoming these difficulties, but it's not that straightforward. It can't be done if it's done in secret, I don't think. And again, I stress the point that the older members of our movement must make this initiative. If they don't empower young people to experience these things in that way, we just perpetuate the problem. So I feel sorry for your situation. If it's a real situation, I don't know if it's hypothetical.
Should I go to question number 2? We read from the Revelation exercise, someone who said women should be trained to do some business as a way of livelihood. Right? Is it of good or of importance to have a family that is a husband who is working and the wife is employed, and to leave the children in care of the other person?
The question is it an ideal arrangement to have both parents working and the children having the care of another person? Well, I guess my response would be, what does council say? What do Regional Adventist hold? At least in my child guidance, at least in my reading of it, the understanding is that, the mother should prioritize, or rather, the parents, particularly the mother, have a responsibility to prioritize the rearing of the children over say a career. So it's different, say in a situation, for example, like the one I'm in, where with my wife and I, we don't have children. And, in that sort of situation, if you have a couple, no children in the picture, there's nothing wrong with both of them working. In fact, I think it's good that both of them work. Right? But once children are in the picture, some sort of arrangement needs to be arrived at. There must be a reordering of priorities such that the children become the priority over say, a career. And from my reading of it, the weight of that burden lies upon the mother. And I don't think where the parents are alive and healthy and I don't think it's an ideal arrangement to leave your children to the care of someone else. They're your responsibility. My sister, and then Marshall.
Well, I wanted to ask, maybe I'm not too familiar with it, but when we were learning before, I know that Constantine passed some award in 320. But then today we learned in the council of Nicaea that 325 is a 25. Maybe that is why we're going to stressing this.
Okay, basically what happened was Constantine passed the Sunday law in 321, which was a pagan Sunday law honoring the venerable day of the sun, commanding all people to rest on Sunday except agricultural laborers. Right? But what we see in 325 in the Council of Nicaea is that laws were passed, right, exalting Sunday, as we read, right? Saying Sunday should be a rest day for various things. So all they did was essentially they took Constantine's old Sunday law and what's the phrase that we read? Basically, they took that Sunday law and began to enforce it as a Christian institution. That's what they did in 325. Right. So then we read in Haskell's book, Story of David the Prophet, that is at the Council of Nicaea, that was the first time we see Sunday, beginning to adopt a sabbatic character, beginning to adopt the form and veneer of a Christian institution. So all they did, yes, he passed the pagan Sunday law 321, but 325 at the council, they passed Sunday laws and they just took that old Sunday law and began to enforce it as a Christian institution. Then, from then on it was enforced as it was adopted as this is Christianity as presenting it.
So was it the first and two things?
Passed it to pagan.
When we see like the second and the way 321 becomes the pagan.
Okay. I don't know about placing 321 as one phase and 325 as another in terms of trying to locate that on our line. I've not done that, but we do know that there's a progression. There's a progression in the development of Sunday laws beginning at the Midnight Cry. As we've stated, that the Constitutional Convention will frame the proposals that they begin to be enforced at the Midnight Cry. And thus when we see the first Sunday laws, and we have testimonies, sorry, I can't pull up any references off the top of my head, but you can demonstrate through Props identifies that there's a progressive escalation in Sunday laws, bringing you to the Sunday law of Bible prophecy, right? The Sunday law which constitutes the mark of the beast. So in terms of two phases, I don't know if I can vouch for that, but certainly a progressive development from the Midnight Cry to the Sunday law.
It's a follow-up question on what she's asking. We've identified that Constantine at the Council of Nicaea and the the Council of Olymp. Both were councils which would typify an assembly of men. So would it be right to say under Trump's administration, Congress with that council? Because, or maybe I don't understand what the Constitutional Convention is. Is it a separate body from Congress, or it's Congress when it's dealing with constitutional issues?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. From the little reading I've done on the Constitutional Convention, that it's convened specifically for the purpose of addressing the matter of the Constitution, right? But whether it consists of members of Congress, whether it's just Congress sitting to deal with the Constitution, I can't speak to that at this point.
Now I just asked I just want to do some clarifications concerning the four soul judgments. Because we mark the four soul judgments linked with the horns, with the four horns of the four trumpets and the four horns. I just wanted to make it clear for me now, looking at the four soul judgments, which we marked here as pestilence and the famines and the sword and some noisome beast. I see ahead that you put from 1989 until Midnight Cry, and then also from Midnight Cry you plug them in also. So I just want to see how did that happen? How you plug them in, because we apply them from 1989 to Midnight Cry, and also we take them at the same line and put them from Midnight Cry to Sunday to Midnight.
Our answer to that is Rule 10, right? What does Rule 10 tell us? Symbols can have two or more significations, right? So, considering the fact that these four soul judgments are symbols, right? At one level, you can relate to them as symbols. They can have two or more significations, meaning that you can plug them from the midnight cry to the Sunday law, right? And you can do that from 1989 to the midnight cry. One of the justifications that I was using to come to that conclusion is the fact that in Ezekiel 14, the Lord tells us that He's going to stretch forth His hand upon Jerusalem. And we know that you mark Jerusalem at the midnight cry. And when the Lord stretches forth His hand upon Jerusalem, He's sending four soul judgments, right? So you already know from that verse that this happens when the land sinned grievously. And we know that the United States is going to sin. It's going to sin grievously at the midnight cry, right? They're going to pass the first Sunday law, right? And that constitutes sinning grievously. Now, when you look at the nature of those four soul judgments, Ezekiel doesn't mention them once in his book, right? In Ezekiel chapter 5, he's going to mention those same four soul judgments. But this time he's going to quantify, rather validate the specific characteristic or additional nature of those four soul judgments. And in Ezekiel chapter 5, we read that those four judgments are upon a third part, right? So there's famine upon a third part, pestilence upon a third part, towards the all winds, which is noisome beasts, upon a third part, and the sword upon a third part. And we know that the trumpets are identified as being judgments upon a third part, right? So at that level, the four soul judgments are the four trumpets, because the characteristics are the same. They're both targeting a third part. So at that level, considering the fact that you can mark the trumpets from 1989 to the midnight cry, it gives you prophetic justification based on the fact that the four soul judgments are upon a third part to overlay the four soul judgments from 1989 to the midnight cry. I don't know if it's making sense. Yes, and also maybe just to find it out. When you do that, we know that we identified that a trumpet is a horn, right? Based on the principle in Joshua that a trumpet is made out of ram's horns. So a trumpet is a horn. So when you look at the horns, the purpose of the horns is to scatter, according to Zechariah chapter 1. But when you look at when the Lord scatters His people, if you go to Leviticus 26, when He's scattering His people, you're going to see that those four soul judgments are mentioned in Leviticus 26. Because in Leviticus 26, the Lord promises to bring the sword, and in the siege of Jehoiachin, He promises the famine and the pestilence, right? And in the time of Zedekiah, the kingdom is divided. Israel is totally scattered, which is a division towards the four winds. So those four trumpets, those four ones of Zechariah to scatter Israel, are the 4 7 times of Leviticus 26. And they contain in the very nature the four soul judgments. So from what we've been understanding in this message, that you can put Manasseh in 1989, Joachim at 9/11, Chin at midnight, and Zedekiah at the midnight cry, where the kingdom is totally destroyed. So at that level.
My question is directed to Elder Kamani. It's based on Genesis chapter 2, verse 21. It says, "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs, and he closed up the flesh instead thereof." So my question is, was Adam's sleep, it wasn't an ordinary sleep according to what the Bible is saying. It says that He caused Adam a deep sleep before He formed Eve. So my question is there any truth we can learn from there before Adam was given a helpmate?
The truth that I take from this is that this helpmeet on the reform line is given at the time of the end. And in the history before the time of the end, there's this waiting, or what you might call sleep, or this time period of inactivity that's occurring. period of darkness, that we call it, precedes a reform movement where Eve is going to now be created from this bone. So, just at that simple level, that's the truth that I would get from this. It shows you that there's a period of darkness, of sleeping, of spiritual death, that precedes the redemption of God's church. And if anybody else has any more deeper insight into that, that's how I will approach it.
And I've got another question. On Friday, it is directed to Elder Kamenda again. On Friday, when we started the meeting, you mentioned the issue of rebellion of Korah, Dathan, and Abraham. And you said that their problem wasn't on Moses, but on Miriam and Aaron. And my question is, those who have got the problem with the structure and those who would be like finding faults, would there be any time when they will come back again during this time?
This question comes up over and over again, of whether or not someone who steps off the platform leaves, can they ever come back again? For me, there's so much evidence from the prophetic stories that they never do. Absalom never comes back again. Abner never comes back again. Judas never comes back again. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram never come back again. These people just do not come back again. The only reason we have trouble with this is because it's in the present day situation. It's not in the past, it's not in the future. If I were to tell you, in the future, somewhere, half the people in this room are going to be lost, nobody would question that. If I said today, half of the people in this room are already lost, people would have problems with that, because it's in the present. We're struggling in this reform movement, just like all the previous generations have struggled, because it's a present testing truth. And we're not prepared to have enough faith, to exercise faith, to have righteousness by faith, to take these lines and not just have them as some kind of Bible study, but these are real life things that are happening. And when we say these truths have eternal consequences, we mean it. If you don't have a love for the truth, if you don't have a love for this movement, you will be eternally lost. There is no recovery from this position.
I think also inspiration classes as a peculiar sin, that of attributing to Satan the work of the Holy Spirit. And if you look at each one of these situations, particularly as it relates to the shakings that have taken place in this movement, those fulfilling the role of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, those that have been leading out of these phases of, departure, from the truth. That's the position that they've all taken. Taking the position that what we're seeing, what we're under, is a strong delusion from Satan, and Satan is leading out in this work, and Satan is leading us all, and then Satan has captured the head of the work and is leading us all to perdition, to irretrievable ruin. Right? And now when we come with, the truths that were presented on Raphael Canyon, people are so dark and satanic in their satanic delusion that they even believe and teach that it's going to come to pass. What they're saying, the prediction that they're giving, will happen. But when it happens, know that it's still from Satan. So, at that point, I don't know what you get people sound. I don't know if there's any coming back from that. I know I haven't seen it. the spirit of prophecy highlights that as, listen, when you cross a special, you cross a red line when you take that position, when you start attributing the work of God to Satan himself. Right? My brother, then at the back.
Just for clarity to you and Elder Tabo, you mentioned something about Clovis, the profound statement which you emphasized that after his death, that his kingdom was divided to his son. And the prophet statement which you emphasized was at the same year of you're marking up the battle of which you win. That year he died. And you mark that is the fall of the USA. So as I was busy here trying to connect the studies of which Brother Nyasha was making at Midnight Cry, you see the USA 4. So I'm trying to bring them the thought or the logic or the point which you're making that this year, Clovis, at the same year Clovis died. Do you mark do you mark the battle which you win as his fall?
Well, I think for clarity, Clovis did not die the year of the Battle of Tolbiac. He died the year of the Council of Orleans, which I understand was 511. And the prophetic argument being drawn from that historic fact, when you see the Council of Orleans, then what is the Council of Orleans representing? It's representing a constitutional convention that's called at midnight, whose stipulations go into effect at the midnight cry. Right? And we're saying when that happens, Clovis dies, the United States dies. And that dying is a process from midnight cry to the Sunday movements. Right? That when America forms an image of the beast, it's crossed the bridge. It's crossed Milton Bridge. Right? And that, and that decision, so I say, to bring about even church and state, essentially constitutes a point of no return. That's when America dies.
Another question. You mentioned the one at the year 6 July, if I'm not mistaken, 6 July 1511 or 511. What is the significance of this 31 decree?
The decree?
Yes, the decree. It's the 31 decree or the 31 decree which you made. I couldn't catch it clearly.
Oh, the 31
yeah,
degrees?
Yeah, I want
okay.
to...
No, I was just giving a breakdown of what actually was determined. It was just an overview of the council. It said there were some 32, 30 or so delegates, church fathers came. They passed in the region of over 30 decrees. It was just an overview of the council. Now, some of those decrees, their prophetic significance is apparent and glaring, like when they're passing Sunday laws, when they're passing decrees to strengthen the authority of the Bishop of Rome, right, and so on. So those are, the prophetic significance of those decrees is clear and apparent. Some of those decrees, you read them, and at least I haven't as yet seen what can be understood from them when applying them prophetically in our life. But it's something worth looking at. If you want to go into the actual council and look at each one of those decrees and try to see whether they can bring together other lines which can provide second witnesses to the things that you're seeing. It's the way they feel it. My brother had Japan, then Marshall, and then behind Marshall, Rawlings behind Marshall.
Mine is directed to Elder Commander. We learn from the spirit of prophecy, where it says when a young man is looking for a partner, should look into where the fact that the partner can stand shoulder to shoulder in terms of the knowledge of the truth. But then you later on made a comment about the tradition that is happening within the movement or outside, whereby women are not allowed to do not come, let me not say are not allowed, do not usually present. My question is, maybe I would want you to help us on 1 Corinthians 14 on verse 34, where it says, let your women keep silent in churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also says the law. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for women to speak in the churches. So maybe basing upon this verse, that's where we see some of this tradition which is practiced in the movement or outside. Maybe
Are you asking me to comment on those verses? Or I'm not sure what you're asking me exactly. My point was that there's a problem with humanity in general, that men subjugate women, and we need to make sure that that culture, that atmosphere doesn't enter into our movement. We also said that in some places across the world, it's already here, that there's a culture that women should not be equal with men in their access to teach, to promulgate the message. And I think we should make efforts to ensure that that doesn't happen. So now you're bringing forward a verse that says women should be silent in the church. So how do you understand that verse?
Yeah, according to our understanding, maybe we might also need to apply it prophetically, or not literally, maybe as it reads. Because when I tried to look for the words, the meaning of the word silent, it gave me a meaning that it's being silent or to hold a peace, which indicated to me that at Corinth maybe there was a controversy which was happening over something, I don't know, but women were given an admonition or a rebuke to keep silent, because there was a controversy of some sort. That's how I understood it. So which means it had nothing to do with their presenting the message of God in the church, but it applied to making noise, so that it says they should hold their peace when in church, when they. That's how I understand.
I think, like you, the simple answer that I understand is that we should be applying these passages prophetically, spiritually, not literally. Just as we should, for Corinthians chapter 11, the issue of cutting of hair, the issue of head covering, it's a prophetic parable that's being described there. I don't profess to understand the details of that prophetic imagery that's being brought to view, but I don't agree to the fact that we take these passages literally and half of our congregation should sit there silently, not participating in the spiritual growth, because there's so much information that we have that mitigates against that truth, especially when you look at the ministry of Ellen White. That would bear against her whole ministry to use this verse to suggest that women in the church shouldn't be able to speak. So whatever it means in its local, literal situation, I don't believe we're supposed to apply those verses literally at the end of the world. Neither do I think we should be applying 1 Corinthians chapter 11 literally. It's just another form of subjugation by men over women, this issue is. We need to understand the deep spiritual truths that Paul is trying to portray to us at the end of the world. We can just show simple examples of this. If we think it's right for women to have long hair and men to have short hair, we don't understand about the Nazarite vow. We don't understand about the story of Samson. We don't understand the imagery of Islam. All who have long hair. And we know Islam cover their heads with turbans. So this spiritual truth that's been tried to portray here, being portrayed through this literal story. And I think it behooves us to be on our knees to try and understand what these passages mean, rather than taking them literally at face value and putting them as some kind of test upon women that God has never designed us to place in existence.
I think Marshall and Williams.
Okay. My question was on the rebellion. That those that step off the platform after having had evidence, you rightly say they've committed the unpardonable sin.
Who's the question to?
They don't turn back. They don't come back.
I don't know who the question was to, but if it was to me, I would venture to say that these people were never on the platform. They may have had an intellectual assent to the truth, but they were never converted by it. They may be in the field, but I'm not sure if they were actually fully on board with this message ever. If you take the story of Judas as given in Desire of Ages and read carefully through it, you know that this man was not on the platform. In the same house, in the same field, but he was on a different platform. And I would venture to say that people like Peter, who came off the platform, got back on. Some people don't, unfortunately. But Peter was on the platform, and I don't think Judas ever was. He was there for his own reasons, his own purposes. And only through eternity will we see the real reasons why people have entered into this movement. But I'm not sure if they were ever on the platform to begin with.
Brother Williams.
My question is directed to Elder Paminda. In your last presentation, if I heard you well, you seem to allude to the fact that if a young man or a woman is contemplating on entering into courtship, should consult or seek advice to elder brethren or brethren of experience. My question is, to what extent would one go to the depth of seeking that advice in view of counsel which is written in terms of courtship and marriage, in light of getting counsel from a human being compared to getting counsel from inspiration?
It's in the booklet, I believe, your notes. It says if you're used to praying twice a day, you should be praying 4 times a day. We should be seeking counsel from the Lord, of course. We should be checking our own heart and understanding who and what we are. We should be asking Lord for providential openings that we might be able to see for ourselves the person that we're contemplating marrying in a true light. But if we're praying and we think that the Lord's going to give us some vision or some dream, or we're going to sit with our eyes closed and open our Bibles at any random page and pick a verse up and use this as some kind of testimony that this marriage was consecrated in heaven, it's foolhardiness. We have strong counsel to seek for wisdom from people of experience. It doesn't negate seeking the Lord to show us and help us and to direct us in the steps in which we should go. Of course not. We should be seeking counsel from those people with whom we know have our best interests at heart. Even our best friends. People who care about us and can look objectively. The problem is, the human heart is desperately wicked, it's deceitful above all things, and you can trick yourself into coming up to any story that you want. You can turn black into white and white into black very easily. And it's dangerous to try and venture on and thinking that you can manage this step between you, the Lord, and this person. We have so much counsel not to do that. And if you look at half of, well not maybe half, but a fair proportion of this booklet is letters that Ellen White has written to people who have sought counsel from her. And often that counsel that she gives is not as a prophet, it's as an experienced Christian that she gives. She doesn't say, the Lord told me this or told me that your marriage is going to work or it's not going to work. She gives counsel as any person of experience would give. If we read those letters carefully, you'll see that over and over again. That it's general counsel that any of us who's an experienced, God-fearing Christian would and should give. So I don't see that concept or idea as standing in conflict to personal devotion and consecration and our personal prayer to the Lord to show us through His Word, through providence, what we should and should not be doing.
I'll just add, from my personal perspective, and I think I was discussing this with Tom earlier in the day, and that was as I reflect on, I guess, the courtships I've seen and the marriages I've seen and the outcome of those marriages. I think, as young people, I think we suffer much for want of counsel. We suffer much for want of counsel. I think maybe from some perspectives, I guess the situation where that the opportunity to counsel may not necessarily be available in certain situations that I'm thinking of, but where we can, we certainly should seek the counsel of others as far as possible. Because you have to think about it. You once you determine to court someone, you're already compromised. Because you're courting. Well, why would you decide to court someone over someone else? Because you like them. You're already seeing something that you like, right? You're not objective. You're already biased. Did you get what I'm saying? So you really do need at that point or it is important to take that step to seek the counsel of your peers, the people that have your best interests at heart, people who know the person that you're interested in, the elders of the church. It's very important, and I see some situations where you see marriages that have not worked out, and different things that have happened, and so on. And you just wonder to yourself, had that counsel been there, had these steps been taken, maybe that could have been averted. Because a lot of the time people see, and which is another unfortunate thing. People see and they won't say anything. And that was something that I've learned is if I see something going wrong, if I see a problematic development that, you know what, I don't think this is going well, right? And my brother is not seeing it. I've determined, even at the risk of myself, at the risk of losing a friendship, if that's what it means, but to say something, right, to that brother, not to just let them go that way when you can see reasonably well from counsel that the way things are being done here is not going to end well. Just some thoughts. How much time do you have left?
13 minutes.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
Yes.
My brother?
My question is directed to Alex's mind. When you read Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, just the first phrase, it says, and Adam knew Eve, his wife. So I just need an explanation from the courtship. What would make a man to know that whomsoever he's having in a courtship have a conclusion that no, this is my wife?
So I don't really understand the question, sorry.
When you read Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, and Adam knew Eve, his wife. I'm asking in a concept that what would make a man through a courtship that this is really my wife? What make, like, for instance, Adam knew that Eve was his wife? To draw a conclusion.
My understanding of that word "know" in this verse means they become one flesh, they have intimacy. It's not an intellectual knowledge. It's when they become one, when they share the marriage bed. It's not some kind of understanding that he knows something about her, he knows who she is. Over and over again, where this idea of know means to have intimacy with someone. So if we were to turn to Deuteronomy 34 verse 10, there arose not a prophet sent in Israel like unto Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. It's trying to portray this concept of intimacy, not an intellectual knowledge that's being portrayed here. It's the symbology or concept of one flesh in Genesis 4:1. They've already married before this chapter, and it says that they have intimacy, and it says in the same verse, and Adam knew his wife, which he could see. So you can see the context of what knowing means. It doesn't mean some kind of knowledge of who she is.
The challenges that come through life, how do you tackle that when you learn to keep the law of God, so that you don't end up losing whilst you're trying to keep the law of God?
Romans 8:28 says, "But we know that all things work together for good So I understand that to mean that everything, if you can imagine that there you are, there's this force field around you, a shield, so to speak, and the only things that can penetrate that shield are what God allows. So nothing can come to you, no temptation can come to you unless God allows it. It filters through His protective care of you. Agree with that? Anything. So that means when something comes to you, He allows it to happen. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that He designs or instigates or engineers these things, because He doesn't go into some kind of agreement with Satan. But whatever comes your way, through Satan, through God's direct testing of you, or through time and chance. If things just happen, time and chance happen to all men. Only those things which God sees fit that are going to benefit you will He allow to actually reach you. So, Jesus was made perfect through suffering, through these trials. We know that. So, when this test comes to you, more often than not, it's not going to be something that's pleasant. It could be pleasurable, it may not be. And what I'm suggesting is, when that event happens, that test happens, we can face it in two ways. We can face it in our own strength and succeed, which we're required to do, because He won't bring any temptations that you can't bear. So that means you can bear every trial that comes upon you in your own strength, I believe. But what He wants you to do is find joy and happiness and peace in that trial. And if we do it in our own strength, because it's not a pleasurable thing, we won't. We'll say, oh, that horrible trial, but at least it's over now. Now I can go back to peace and rest. But lo and behold, another one comes, and then another one, and it never ceases. So our lives become one of misery. If we try to resist these temptations, the alternative is just to, as you might say, go with the flow. So if someone offers you some can of Coke, instead of keep on resisting over and over again and being miserable about it, you just say yes, okay, and you join everything, you join the world. You want to pleasure and just forget everything. But if you're going to resist, you'll see that it's going to harm your relationships. In yourself you won't be happy. So what God wants us to do is to find happiness in these trials. The only place you can find happiness is through Him changing your heart. And in that test, as you're going through it, depending on the speed of the test, if you can anticipate you're going to enter into a trial, express the way you can. Because most trials come through people that you already know. So you know how people are going to operate. You can begin to sense within seconds that this is heading into an argument. You know that. You've lived with your parents for long enough. You've got siblings. You've seen how it happens. When you sense what's going to happen, at that moment you need to withdraw. Whether physically you're able to or not, at least mentally and emotionally, and you need to turn to the Lord to ask not for strength to endure the trial. You need to ask for the ability to go through that trial without having ill feeling, without having hatred or negativity toward the person or toward the issue. To have peace and contentment. Depending on what the issue is, depends on what you ask. But I encapsulate it in this phrase, to have love for that test. Whatever that test may be. Love may not be the appropriate word. It may be to seek for peace. Because you might not love the car crash that you've just gone through. There's nothing to love there. It's caused you a lot of problems. But to find peace in that. And the peace, which is the peace only God can give you can't get from the world. It can't be manufactured. We read that. And that's what we need to ask for at each juncture, at each test. And we don't live that way. We live through the trials on our own strength. And God does not want us to do that. It's not an enjoyable way to live.
The events we can mark at the PBM, but not in relation to the study on the three constitutes, at least as far as I've been looking at it. The events, I mean, if you look at the studies on the tradition before midnight, the 30 years of Justinian's decree, we know that there's going to be a law introduced at the tradition before midnight in response to activities of Islam, and that this law will be passed at midnight, and that the introduction of this law at the tradition before midnight constitutes the image of the beast for the priests and so on and so forth. That's one external event. I understand that some of my brethren would like to identify more. But as far as in relation to specifically the study on the three Constantines, no, that's not what has come out at least at this point.
The question is directed to Alpha Mamayo. We read a quotation from Adventist Hall, page 47, and the subtitle is Questions a Girl Should Ask Before Marriage. And one of the questions is, what has been his past record? How to find out, considering that most people who are joining the movement, they're either coming from a very, very dark past, like where you've been worldly and you've done all the bad things. So to answer this question, what has been his past record? What exactly are we looking at when we're checking his past record?
I think we're looking at many things, including his dark record, to try and erase our past, which affects our present, is not wise. There are some things that can deeply affect our character. There are some things which are part of our character. It's not just, I don't think he's referring to some criminal activity that this man did when he was 16 and he got in trouble with the police. It's not just that. It's his conduct in his past, distant past, but also present past. It covers many, many areas of a person's life. There's one example. I can't direct you to the passage, but I'll paraphrase it. Ellen White says if a person has been involved in spiritualism in their past life, then when they become a Christian, even though they're fully converted, even though they're fully surrendered, they have to be very cautious to the degree that they should shun all impressions, all thoughts and ideas where they would say, I wonder if the Lord spoke to me, or maybe we should do this. They should only rigorously content themselves with getting direction from the written word. Because this avenue that they opened up in their past life, even though they may have walked away from all of that, has impacted them even in the present. There are scars that cannot, I don't believe, be fully straightened out. You know, if you have an accident in this life, that limp that you're left with, you will take with you into heaven for eternity. Now, I don't mean literally, physically, obviously, because we receive new bodies, but there are some things that have eternal consequences. And it's not for me to say what they are and what they're not, but Ellen White says in many places that things that we do here on earth, we suffer for when we get to heaven, eternally. Heaven is a beautiful place, all our tears are taken away. So I'm not trying to explain or trying to conceptualize what that is, but they do have eternal consequences. She gives many examples of this. You know that if you get a sapling and you bend it in a certain direction, as that sapling turns into a tree in its bent condition, when it grows to maturity, you will never, ever be able to straighten it out. It becomes an impossibility. Can the tree bear fruit? Yes. Can it serve you well? Yes. But the effects of that warped experience back in childhood can never be totally done away with or raised. It doesn't mean that a person can't be saved, cannot mean that they're not fit to be used at the highest levels of God's service, but it has consequences, and it behooves every one of us to understand the things that we're getting into. If you were to buy a car, you want to know if that car's been in any accidents. You want to know who the previous drivers were. So it's an issue to me of common sense. Just a straightforward business transaction would tell you that you need to know what you're entering into. And if we were to do that with a car or a piece of equipment or a house, more so with the person that we desiring to spend the rest of our mortal lives with, and in whatever shape or form, potentially eternity with. So I have no idea what relationship looks like, even though we know we don't have marriage in heaven. But that relationship is an enduring relationship. We want to make sure we know what we're getting into. Doesn't mean we necessarily say no because someone had a bad past. Everyone's had a bad past, otherwise we wouldn't have a great debt to pay. Frankness and openness in relationships are key to making sure that they are healthy and functioning.
I think we're out of time. We could close with the prayer.
Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the question and answer session we have just had. We thank you for the many truths that you made us understand today. There are many lessons that you learned. We pray that may you help us to understand them and to internalize them and apply them in our lives. We pray for grace to do so. We have learned many things, especially as young people, with regards to marriage. We pray that may we be able to make use of the counsel of the elder brothers we have and sisters. May we seek counsel to them before we consider any attachments. We pray that may we not have secret courtships as they have been identified. We pray that may we seek counsel from you and from the church. We also pray that may you be with the camp as it continues on to go to the end. We pray that may you bless everything that you continue on to them. We ask that may you help each and every one of us in our different experiences. May the things we are learning enable us to meet the circumstances, even the situations we are going to find ourselves in, and be able to meet them and practice everything. There's many things we can pray, but we pray about all. May be glorified in everything that has been said today and that has been done. May you place your blessing in everything that is going to continue with us as we shall rest. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.